Back to the Future, the animated series, episode 4, Witchcraft. This is a pretty interesting episode. This actually involves all the characters of the show, not counting Jennifer. It involves all like the main characters that actually time travel. So we got Doc, his entire family, and we have Marty. Jennifer is involved with the story, but not as far as time travel, and she's really only in like the beginning and the end, because this episode has a bit of a focus on Marty and his story. So it starts off with Marty and Jennifer, and Marty's talking to like this random girl. I don't know what the deal. I mentioned in like my first episode review that they are in college right now. So they're in college. Marty's failed another random test, and it's him talking to like this random girl. And so I'm like, I don't know who she is, but I don't like her. She ain't Jennifer. So she's trying to like pick him up or whatever, and he's like, no, I'm like with Jennifer. And so he looks over, and Jennifer's talking to like this really big dude. And the girl's like, I heard a rumor that they have a date this Saturday. So Marty goes over there, and he's like, hey, back off or I'll, cut you down to size. And they had a really awesome joke, because the dude was like, what size? Like, your size or normal human size, which I thought was really funny. But, the guy ends up walking off, and he tells Jennifer, like, I'll see you Saturday. And Marty, like, flips out, because he's like, I can't believe you're stepping out on me. And she's like, don't you want to hear my side of the story? You're already calling me guilty. He's like, you're right. I'll hear your side of the story, and then I'll consider you guilty. And so she like pushes him in the water fountain and stuff. So he doesn't give her a chance, which ends up leading into the rest of the episode. And this is exactly how the episode plays out, because they kind of cut back and forth. So this is what's happening with him. Then they cut in with Christopher Lloyd doing the live action thing, because he introduces the story and then he cuts in during like this middle portion. So it starts with Marty, and then he's like, wait, I forgot to tell you what was happening with me and my family. And it just cuts to this random footage. They're being chased by Egyptians, and they're getting to the DeLorean because I think it had to have been Vern. Vern put like the Groucho Marx mask on the Sphinx. Like, I don't know how he did that. They even mentioned it. It was like, I don't know how you were able to get that much anyway. But he puts the glasses and the big nose and the eyebrows on there. So they're being chased by Egyptians. They hop in the DeLorean, and this dude throws a spear and it hits the flux capacitor and shoots them randomly through time. So then it cuts back to Marty, and he's like trying to figure out what's going on. Nobody's around. So he goes and he ends up finding Einstein. And this random little thing, and I mentioned every single episode, there's like some new, here's a brand new invention that Doc has made related to either the DeLorean specifically or just time travel. And he made like this itty bitty tiny mail carrier. It was like just a mail truck that was sent through time, and it was like an automatic, it was a recording that he made. So Marty picks it up and is like, hey, we need you to come back and bring, apparently he makes these all the time now, but he's like, we need you to come back to Salem, Massachusetts, and we also need you to bring a spare flux capacitor. So it's like, get a flux capacitor. He takes Einstein, they both jump back in time, they take the train. So they go back to Salem, they find the family, and we find out that they've actually been there for like a couple of months or something like that. He was like, yeah, it takes a long time to use the spare parts they had to even build the little time truck that he sent to Marty. So they'd actually been there for quite some time in Salem. And this is where the episode like really kicks in. Once Marty and Einstein go back to save the family, they're of course in Salem, Massachusetts. So anyone who somehow doesn't know the history of Salem, Massachusetts, that's where the witch hunts were. Anything and everything made you a witch. They even have this thing, I'm pretty sure started in this episode, they call them Back to the Facts. And they introduced the fact that 2 dogs were actually considered witches, both of which were found guilty. There were like multiple dogs, but 2 of them were actually found guilty of being witches. So that's an actual fact, which is insane. But that's how crazy Salem, Massachusetts was. And the craziest thing, which they do in this episode, is the water test, which is if you're considered a witch, if they don't burn you, then they do the water test, which is they basically toss you in the water. If you float, you're a witch, which is insane. And if you don't, it's like, oh man, we killed an innocent person. That is legitimately how it was. So things are going through the episode, and of course, naturally, they run into a tannin, and things go crazy. Doc ends up being like a garbage man or whatever, and Marty's helping him out. So he's helping him out, and something goes wrong, and he ends up tossing like this big barrel onto, this tannin. So he gets super pissed, he rides off, and then we find out later, when they go to like the town square or whatever, Marty sees like this really cute girl, and so he's talking with her, and he looks over and he sees the tannin, and she's like, what's wrong? Because she was like, do you want to go out for a walk or whatever. And so he's excited and stuff, and he looks over, and she's like, well, what's wrong? He's like, nothing, like, this guy's just always looking mad at me. She's like, oh, that's my dad. So this is like a young female Tannen. And as soon as Marty found that out, he was like, oh, if that's the case, then no, I can't go on a walk with you. I'm gonna go like talk with the dog or whatever, and I'll see you later. And that's when things just get real bad for him, because she got super pissed. This was the first episode, the first of anything I think that I've seen Back to the Future related, that was like, here is an evil female Tannen, because as soon as he said no and he took off, she was like, oh, I'm going to teach him. And then they got like real serious, because this actually happens a lot. And I was like, dang, he's about to get like some crazy witch rape charges or something insane. And that's pretty much what happens in this episode. She says that he like was saying like bad things to her, and then he was trying to use his, you know, witch magic to like seduce. She doesn't say seduce, but like to seduce her basically. And it was just like, holy crap, this dude's about to get murdered for like some false charges because she was mad that he said no. And that's pretty much where the episode goes after that. It's like him on trial for being a witch, and they have this really awesome moment, and this was what I was talking about early on with it being like Martys Lesson. He's judged, and they believe he's a witch, and he's like, hey, you guys didn't even hear my side of the story. And it was even funnier because of the way the person said it, but it was super subtle. It was just like, who cares? And he was like, wow, where have I heard that before? So it was supposed to be like his big lesson for the episode about hearing someone else's side of the story before jumping to conclusions. But naturally, he's considered a witch, which is insane, because there is a dude that is literally green in this episode. He looked like a straight up zombie. And it was crazy to me with any of this. Even Marty mentions it to another woman, because she was like, you know, you look like a witch or something. And she was like this old, ugly looking lady. And he's like, look who's talking. And she shut up too. It was super funny because she had this face. And then he was like, but look who's talking. She was like, and like backed up. And it made me laugh really bad. So I really love some of the stuff they had in this. But they do the water test. They push him in the water. They think he dies because Doc actually has the DeLorean going underwater. And he and Jules make like this little air pump system so that they have a tube to give to Marty so he can breathe underwater. And then they, you know, get him into the DeLorean and they take off. And because everything's fixed now, so they're able to, you know, all take off. But everyone thinks that he died. And so they have the girl Tannen, and she's like, oh wow, I just wanted to teach him a lesson and stuff. And I was like, wow, these people are dicks. Like, she wanted him to like be taught a lesson, and he's, you know, she thinks he's dead. And like I said, the other dude was just green, and I'm like, how the F is he not considered something? And he was legitimately green. Like, he looked like a 50s zombie. He was just straight up green with like white hair and stuff. So it was really funny to me watching that. But ultimately, Marty is saved by the family, everything's good, and they end up going back to the future. And that's when Marty talks to Jennifer again, and he's like, you know, I'm sorry that I didn't listen to your side of the story, I just jumped to conclusions. And it ended up, of course, as being she was tutoring the guy. And that was pretty much all there was to it. But I really enjoyed this episode. I think it was probably my favorite so far, just because of how crazy the story was about Marty being killed under like really false pretenses. But it mostly started because of the girl saying that he was a witch and stuff like that. And they had a really great line when he was in court. And she was like, you know, he was trying to, you know, the magic and all that stuff. And then he was having discourse with his dog, in which they considered a familiar. And he was like, I wasn't having discourse. I was just talking to him, right, Einstein? And Einstein barked. And he was like, oh, discourse means to talk? I was like, oh, well, I didn't know that. And I was like, wow, Marty's so dumb sometimes. It was really, really funny to me. So I think this episode made me laugh the most, like either intentionally or unintentionally, with like the dude who looked straight up like a zombie to me. But it was really good. Like, I just loved the comedy of it, the way they did kind of the story. Because none of the other episodes really have stories to them, like, you know, like character lessons. Like, they're actually just like the characters go on adventures, and that's pretty much it. Like, when Doc takes the family back in time, there wasn't really a lesson there. It was more like he screwed up, and then he said he was sorry at the end. Like, he screwed up in the beginning, and that's why they went back in time in the first place. So he apologized for screwing everything up, but there really wasn't that much of a lesson. He just screwed up twice, and then he said sorry. So that was really all there was to that. But this one actually had like a legitimate lesson for one of the characters, and there was just a lot of funny moments to me. So I think this is my favorite episode so far, but it was really funny. Like, they had some funny stuff in there, the way everything played out with this girl just saying like, oh, he did this and did that, and it's like, wow, that actually happens in real life, and it's way worse. But in his case, it was about the same, because he would have actually been killed if it weren't for Doc and Jules coming in with the DeLorean. So very interesting. Another random invention that they made. the DeLorean has floatation devices, because when Marty and Einstein go back in time, they crash land in the water. And Marty's like flipping out. He's like, oh man, I can't breathe. Like, nothing's happening. No water has even gotten in the car. And he's like, I can't breathe. I don't know what to do. We're going to drown. And Einstein like pulls a little lever. It's literally like a flotation device lever. It's like the little rope with the handle on it. I was like, it's going to be flotation devices. And these little, rubber bumpers come out of the bottom and the DeLorean floats up top. So that's another random thing that they've introduced as well. But definitely a fun episode, of course. If you guys have seen it, we would love to know what you guys thought about it. So please put your comments down in the comment section below. And of course, thanks for watching.